Welcome, beautiful outcasts, feared souls, and the ones they never saw coming. You can feel it, can't you? Something shifted. The air around your name ain't the same anymore. The laughs got quieter. The fake smiles got tighter. The people who used to look at you like you were background noise are suddenly watching you like you're a loaded secret with a heartbeat. They heard something, not everything, just enough. Just enough to ruin their sleep. Just enough to make their little inner circle start whispering behind closed doors. Just enough to make panic crawl through rooms you've never even stepped in, because they found out who you really come from. And now it's chaos. Now it's that awkward silence when your name pops up. Now it's those weird glances. Now it's the energy shift you can't fake. Now it's the people who ignored you suddenly trying to study you. Now it's the same ones who used to play with your image acting like they need to move carefully. That's what happens when the truth leaks into a room full of pretenders. See, they were comfortable when they thought you were random. They were bold when they thought you were isolated. They were disrespectful when they thought you had no roots, no force behind you, no story that mattered. They had courage when they mistook your silence for weakness. They had confidence when they assumed your kindness meant you were harmless. They had all the jokes in the world when they thought you came from nowhere. But then one person in their circle found out. One person connected the dots. One person looked a little deeper. One person saw the pattern. One person recognized the blood in your spirit. One person realized that what they were dealing with was not some lost, soft, disposable soul they could use, provoke, erase, or disrespect. And ever since then, the whole mood changed, because people love underestimating you until the file opens, until the history shows up, until the pattern starts making sense, until the spirit behind your eyes starts looking familiar, until they realize your calm was inherited, your fire was inherited, your refusal to break was inherited, your instinct to survive hell and still walk like you own the ashes was inherited. That's when panic starts. Not because you said much, not because you threatened anybody, not because you needed validation, but because truth has a way of entering a room and stripping weak people naked. And weak people hate being exposed. They hate realizing the person they mocked was never ordinary. They hate realizing the one they tried to belittle was carrying something ancient in the soul. They hate realizing the one they tried to isolate actually has a lineage of pressure, endurance, pain, survival, and raw, unteachable presence behind them. They hate that because now they have to revisit every move they made around you, every lie, every cheap shot, every fake alliance, every time they tried to sun you, every time they tried to make you feel small, every time they mistook your patience for permission. Now they're replaying all of it in their heads like a horror movie. And that's the part nobody tells you. When people start finding out who you really are, it doesn't always look like applause first. Sometimes it looks like anxiety. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like gossip. Sometimes it looks like weird tension, strange respect, fake friendliness, and sudden caution. Because some people don't know how to honor power. They only know how to fear it. And your energy, it does something to people. It unsettles the ones who built their confidence on shallow things. It rattles the ones who live off masks. It irritates the ones who can only function when everybody around them is broken, confused, and easy to control. Your presence does damage to systems like that. Not because you talk loud, not because you force attention, but because something about you refuses to kneel where other people were trained to crawl. That's bloodline. And I'm not just talking about family names or public legacy or some shiny story people can post online. No. I'm talking about what runs through your reactions, what shows up when life gets ugly, what wakes up in you when betrayal hits, what stands up inside you when the room turns cold, what keeps you moving when every statistic says you should have folded. That right there is where your real origin lives. It lives in the way you survive things nobody claps for. It lives in the way you carry pain without turning into a beggar for sympathy. It lives in the way your heart gets shattered and somehow still beats with purpose. It lives in the way you walk through humiliation, rejection, abandonment, spiritual warfare, private grief, public disrespect, and still come out with your soul talking reckless to fear. That kind of strength scares people who built themselves out of image. Because they know image can't survive impact, only substance can. And once their inner circle discovered that you are made of substance, the panic was automatic. Now they're trying to figure out how dangerous you are. Now they're trying to calculate what you know. Now they're trying to guess how far your awareness goes. Now they're wondering if you've always known what they were doing. Now they're asking each other questions they should have asked before they played with your name. Who is this person, really? Why do they stay calm like that? Why don't they chase approval? Why do they bounce back so fast? Why does pressure make them sharper? Why does betrayal make them quieter instead of weaker? Why does pain seem to activate something in them? Because you're not built like them. You don't need a crowd to feel real. You don't need constant noise to feel important. You don't need everybody to understand you. You don't need to explain every layer of yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to audition for rooms you were born to disturb. That's what they're finally realizing. And let's be real. A lot of your life has been one long season of being misread. People saw your wounds and thought you were finished. People saw your silence and thought you were empty. People saw your patience and thought you were passive. People saw your losses and thought you were cursed. People saw your softness and thought you were weak. People saw your isolation and thought nobody stood behind you. That's the funny part. They thought because you stood alone, you were alone. No. You stood alone because your spirit was too expensive for cheap company. You stood alone because your mind outgrew the rooms. You stood alone because your discernment started catching things your old heart used to ignore. You stood alone because you had to learn how to hear your own footsteps without needing applause to keep moving. You stood alone because there are seasons where real power gets developed in private. That private season, they never understood it. They thought you were being hidden because you lacked value. You were being hidden because pressure was building. You were being trained in places nobody would survive. You were learning how to read energy without words. You were learning how to survive disappointment without becoming cynical. You were learning how to get betrayed without becoming basic. You were learning how to keep your standards while your heart was bleeding. You were learning how to lose people and not lose yourself. You were learning how to stand in your own skin without begging the room to approve the fit. That is terrifying to people who only know how to function through groupthink, because groupthink needs your insecurity, manipulation needs your confusion, control needs your neediness, and once they realize you've grown past those things, they panic, not a little, deeply, because now they can't bait you the same, they can't lure you the same, they can't guilt you the same. They can't use attention as a leash anymore. They can't use exclusion as punishment anymore. They can't make you betray yourself just to be accepted anymore. That version of you is dead, and they know it. That's why sometimes the energy gets weird right before your elevation becomes obvious. That's why people start acting strange when they sense your awareness catching up. That's why the room gets tense when your confidence is no longer fragile. That's why fake friends turn into quiet observers. That's why old enemies start studying instead of attacking. That's why some people start speaking softly around the same soul they used to provoke loudly. They can feel the shift. They know something ancient woke up in you. And let me say this clearly. You didn't become powerful because life was easy on you. You became powerful because life kept trying to break you and failed. That matters, because there's a difference between people who perform strength and people who were forged in it. There's a difference between confidence that came from compliments and confidence that came from surviving what should have destroyed you. There's a difference between a personality and a presence. Now rejection is turning into standards. Now loneliness is turning into discernment. Now your past is no longer a chain, it's a weapon. And that terrifies the people who benefited from the old version of you. Let them panic. Let them lose sleep trying to decode a person they were too arrogant to appreciate. Let them sit in circles and whisper. Let them overanalyze your silence. Let them wonder whether you know more than you've said. Let them feel the discomfort of realizing they misjudged someone they can no longer manipulate. You spent too much of your life shrinking for fragile people. Too much of your life explaining yourself to those committed to seeing you wrong. Too much of your life trying to look safe, so insecure people wouldn't project their fear onto you. That season is done. You are not here to look harmless. You are here to be whole. And wholeness is intimidating. A whole person is hard to control. A whole person doesn't fold every time the vibe changes. A whole person can walk away from access, attention, money, romance, applause, or status if it costs self-respect. A whole person can sit in silence without panicking. A whole person can be misunderstood without collapsing. A whole person can lose people and still keep direction. A whole person does not need every room. That right there makes weak minds nervous, because weak minds survive by making other people doubt themselves. And you're done doubting. Not because all your questions are gone, not because life is perfect, not because you never hurt, but because something in you finally got tired of abandoning itself to keep the peace. That's the real shift. Not that they found out who you come from. That matters, yes. But the bigger revelation is that you found out who you are. That's what changed the game. Because once you know who you are, manipulation starts glitching. Guilt starts losing volume. Fear starts sounding corny. Intimidation starts looking theatrical. And all those little tactics that used to work on your nervous system start bouncing off. Because your spirit finally stopped negotiating with lies. You know what they were hoping for? They were hoping you'd stay confused. Stay eager. Stay desperate. Stay easy to impress. Stay thirsty for crumbs. Stay addicted to being chosen by people who couldn't even choose themselves. Stay stuck in old wounds. Stay reactive. Stay explainable. Stay tame. But something happened. Life hit you so hard that performance burned off. Illusions burned off. Naivety burned off. People-pleasing burned off. And what was left was raw, real, focused, hard to fool, harder to shake. That version of you is a problem for anybody who profits from your insecurity. And the truth is, some of them are not scared because of what you might do to them. They're scared because of what your existence exposes in them. Your discipline exposes their laziness. Your depth exposes their emptiness. Your endurance exposes their fragility. Your standards expose their manipulation. Your self-respect exposes how cheaply they sold themselves. Your clarity exposes their games. Your growth exposes how stagnant they've been. That's why your presence irritates them without you saying a word. Because your life is a mirror they didn't ask for. And mirrors make cowards furious. You have to understand this so you stop personalizing every weird reaction. Not everybody who gets nervous around you is responding to something you did. A lot of them are reacting to what you represent. You represent survival without permission, growth without validation, power without noise, faith without performance, restraint without weakness, mystery without dishonesty, pain without surrender. That combination is rare, and rare things make fake systems unstable. So when their inner circle found out who you really come from, what they actually discovered was that your story has weight, your silence has context, your standards have ancestry, your refusal to break has history, your intuition has roots, your comeback was never random. There are people who survive by copying trends. Then there are people like you who carry something older than trends, something deeper than image, something that doesn't need branding to be real. And you know what's wild? Most of your power developed while nobody was cheering, while nobody was reposting, while nobody was checking in, while nobody was betting on you, while you were sitting with heartbreak, while you were swallowing disappointment, while you were staring at ceilings at hours nobody talks about, while you were piecing yourself together in private, while you were fighting mental wars with a straight face in public, while you were learning how to keep going when it felt like your soul had blisters. That is where real authority is born, not in popularity, in pressure. A personality can be copied, a presence can't. And that's what their inner circle sensed. Not just your story, your presence, that pressure in your silence, that edge in your calm, that dignity in your restraint, that danger in your self-control, that unspoken thing in your eyes that says, I have survived things you would use as excuses. That message right there shakes people, especially the ones who got comfortable disrespecting you when you were still healing, because now healing is turning into authority. Now pain is turning into precision. Now grief is turning into wisdom. That's why you need to stop envying people who had softer roads. Some of them got comfort. You got construction. Some of them got applause. You got depth. Some of them got shortcuts. You got substance. Some of them got early visibility. You got internal power. And internal power reaches different. It doesn't expire when trends change. It doesn't vanish when people leave. It doesn't collapse when money gets funny. It doesn't disappear when the room gets cold. It stays. That's why what's coming for you is different. Not easy, different. Because now you move with awareness. Now you read what isn't being said. Now you value peace more than attention. Now you know the difference between chemistry and chaos. Now you can feel when energy is off before words confirm it. Now you can walk away without writing a whole speech to justify it. Now you can choose yourself without calling it selfish. Now you can protect your future without feeling guilty toward people committed to your stagnation. That is growth. That is bloodline. That is what they're panicking over. They know the old scripts won't work. You won't beg the same. You won't chase the same. You won't tolerate the same. You won't over-explain the same. You won't return to spaces that drained your light just because they suddenly learned your worth. You won't let late recognition manipulate you into old access. No. If they didn't know how to value your spirit when it was quiet, they don't automatically deserve your presence just because they're scared now. Fear is not respect. Panic is not loyalty. Curiosity is not care. Learn that. Please learn that. Because once your value becomes visible, a lot of people will come close not to love you, but to manage the threat of losing access to you. Read that energy correctly. Some invitations are not honor. They are surveillance. Some compliments are not appreciation. They are information gathering. Some kindness is not genuine. It is strategy. Some sudden support is not loyalty. It is delayed calculation. And you, right now, need discernment more than you need applause. Because this next chapter of your life is not just about becoming stronger. It's about becoming harder to fool. It's about becoming harder to seduce away from purpose. It's about becoming harder to emotionally blackmail. It's about becoming the kind of person who can carry power without letting ego turn it stupid. That matters, because power without discernment becomes self-destruction. But power with discernment, that becomes legacy. And legacy is not just what people remember when you die. Legacy is what your life teaches while you're still here. Legacy is the standard you normalize. Legacy is the boundary you no longer apologize for. Legacy is the example you set when you refuse to betray your soul for temporary acceptance. Legacy is the way you turn your pain into architecture instead of addiction. That's your real revenge, not drama, not chaos, not proving yourself to every doubter, not screaming in every room that got your name wrong. Your real revenge is becoming unrecognizable to the version of you that used to settle. Your real revenge is becoming so aligned that fake love can't reach you. So clear that manipulation gets spotted early. So grounded that attention doesn't intoxicate you. So disciplined that temptation starts looking cheap. So whole that abandonment no longer feels like proof of your unworthiness. So dangerous in your peace that people can feel the boundary before you even speak it. That's what makes them panic. Because they were ready for the wounded you. They were ready for the confused you. They were ready for the eager to please you. They were ready for the one who still needed outside approval to feel solid. They were ready for the you that could be baited by flattery or guilt or fear of exclusion. They were not ready for this version, the one who can smile and still say no, the one who can care and still walk away, the one who can forgive and still never give access again, the one who can be kind without being naive, the one who can feel deeply without drowning in every emotion, the one who can love hard and still keep standards, the one who can stand alone without shaking. That version changes the whole room. So let them panic. Let them feel the consequence of misreading a soul that was never meant to stay small. Let them hear your name and get uncomfortable. Let them remember every time they laughed too early. Let them wonder whether the person they dismissed is now the one they should have respected from the start. Let them sit with that. You keep building, keep training your mind, keep protecting your peace, keep sharpening your instincts, keep refusing fake urgency, keep loving yourself enough to disappoint people who only liked the broken version of you. Keep walking like your existence has weight, because it does. You come from survivors. You come from fire. You come from prayers that refuse to die. You come from lessons carved into pain. You come from resilience that doesn't make sense on paper. You come from a line of pressure bearers, storm walkers, smile through hell souls who learned how to hold dignity with blood in the mouth and faith in the chest. That is why you're still here. That is why they can't figure you out. That is why every hit didn't finish you. That is why your eyes still have that strange calm in them. That is why your comeback energy feels different. That is why panic started the moment they found out who you really come from. Because now they know. You were never the weak one in the story. You were the one becoming.